Good morning, Washington Realtors. It's great to have you with us virtually today. We have 650 members registered for today's event, and that makes this the biggest Till Day ever in our history. Thank you for being part of that. My name is Tom Hormel. I'm your 2021 Washington Realtors President. I'm also serving as your MC today. We're going to hear from a number of speakers today, pollsters and legislators, and of course a number of realtors from all across the state. Some of these pieces are live and some of them are taped. We have two mini studios going, one in Olympia and one here in Spokane. I'm sure with all these moving parts, everything will go smoothly, right? Right. Well, let's see what happens. To start us off, we're going to do our Pledge of Allegiance, the Realtor Pledge, and a few words of encouragement. So wherever you are, maybe if you'd stand up for a couple of minutes and join us. These videos are going to play back to back. And then we'll come back to me. So roll the video, please.
Hello, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Hormel. It is my honor and privilege to be part of my brother Tom Hormel's installation ceremony as the newest president of the Washington State Realtors Association. I would like to extend my congratulations to both Tom and his family. I know you will serve with distinction. We are all very proud of you. Without further ado, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Congratulations.
I am a realtor.
I am a realtor.
I am a realtor. I pledge myself to strive to be honorable and to abide by the golden rule.
To strive to serve well my community and through it, my country.
To abide by the Realtor's Code of Ethics and to strive to conform my conduct to its aspirational ideals.
To act honestly in all real estate dealings and to protect the individual right of real estate ownership and to widen the opportunity to enjoy it.
To seek better to represent my clients by building my knowledge and my competence. I am a realtor.
I'm a realtor.
Realtor.
I am a realtor.
When I was asked to give an inspiration, I was looking at the past year, and it's been a really tough year for all of us. We haven't been able to see each other, and I know that's difficult. And so I wanted to share a little bit of cheer, and this is called the Optimist Creed. And there's actually an Optimist Foundation, so if you're interested in that, look it up online. It's pretty interesting. Promise yourself to be so strong that nothing can disturb your peace of mind, to talk health, happiness, and prosperity to every person you meet, to make all your friends feel that there is something worthwhile in them, to look at the sunny side of everything and make your optimism come true, to think only of the best, to work only for the best, and to expect only the best, to be just as enthusiastic about the success of others as you are about your own, to forget the mistakes of the past and press on to the greater achievements of the future, to wear a cheerful expression at all times and give a smile to every living creature you meet, to give so much time to improving yourself that you have no time to criticize others, to be too large for worry, too noble for anger, too strong for fear, and too happy to permit the presence of trouble, to think well of yourself and to proclaim this fact to the world, not in loud words, but in great deeds, to live in the faith that the whole world is on your side, so long as you are true to the best that is in you. 2021 is going to be a great year. We've got a great leadership team. Tom, I'm so very happy for you. Kitty, thank you so much for all that you did for Washington Realtors last year. I love you.
Okay, well, that's the last time I'm going to ask you to stand up. I want to welcome you back again to Hill Day 2021. Let's do this. So if this is your first time ever being to Hill Day, I want to say thank you. If this isn't your first time ever being at Hill Day, I want to say thank you to you also. If you heard my message last night, I'm all about gratitude, and I just want to say to every single member out there watching this, thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a Realtor member. Thank you for being part of this association. You are what make us great. Our differences are what makes us great. Now I'm going to introduce you to somebody many of you know, Jasmine Jefferson. She's going to tell you a little bit about herself professionally in a second, but I just wanted to say we are so fortunate to have Jasmine as part of the Washington Realtors. She serves on our legislative steering committee and was a 2008 co-chair of our diversity committee, but also she serves in another capacity that she is here to talk to you about. So take it away, Jasmine.
Thanks, Tom, and good morning, Washington Realtors. My name is Jasmine Jefferson. I'm with Windermere Professional Partners in Tacoma, and I've been a Realtor since 2003. Today, I come to you as a Federal Political Coordinator, an appointment by the National Association of Realtors. The job of the FPC is to work with and communicate with the legislator at the federal level on all things real estate. I will be representing the 10th Congressional District and communicating with our next speaker. But before we introduce her, I want to go back about a decade and a half to the first time I met her in person and the influence that she's had on my life moving forward from that day. It was a dark night, winter, might have even been January. We were in the back of a coffee shop and a group of women had come together to talk about why more women were not going into elected positions. I wasn't sure if I needed to be there because I really like to kind of play the background, don't need to be in the front. I looked around the room. I didn't really see anybody that I knew or anyone that I felt I could relate to. I was actually in the process of leaving when I looked across the room and I saw a woman who I knew was a council member. I decided to stay that night. I'm glad that I did because at some point we ended up in breakout groups and we leaned in. It was at that time when we were all leaning into each other and having these conversations. And what I felt from her was the passion and the dedication to leadership. And she encouraged every single woman in that group to find your spot, take it, and move forward. So from that day, I've watched her as mayor. She has done the uncomfortable things, she's done the unpopular things, but I've seen her reach across the aisle, I've seen her bring people together, and I've seen her look at what's good for all people. My hope and expectation during her time in Congress is that she will continue to do the same things and expand upon that. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Congresswoman from the 10th Congressional District, Marilyn Strickland.
Greetings, this is Marilyn Strickland, U.S. Representative representing the 10th Congressional District of Washington State, and I'd like to say hello to all of the Washington State Realtors. I'm very pleased to be here from Washington, D.C., where we just inaugurated President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, making history. And I'm thrilled to work with them because I know that they are going to work very hard to help Americans get their basic needs met. And of course, that includes housing. The Puget Sound region is one of the fastest growing places in the United States, and the South Sound is growing even faster. With that, we know that the supply of housing and access to housing and making sure that accessible housing is equitable is incredibly important to all of us, and especially you in the work you do. It's important for those of us who belong to the federal delegation to hear from the people that we represent. Those of us who understand the importance of housing know that until people's basic needs are met, they often cannot thrive in other areas. So I'm very excited to encourage you to take part in Hill Day, be enthusiastic about it, speak your mind, and really let your representatives know that housing should be considered a basic need and a human right. As I look at opportunities for housing, I am also hopeful that we are going to think of housing in terms of allowing every person at every stage of their life to have housing that is safe, secure, and clean. And that might mean multifamily housing, single-family housing, condominiums, you name it. But we want to make sure that people are securely housed and that they can afford to do it. So thank you so much for the work that you do. It's my honor to represent you in Congress. And again, we know that housing is essential. Will help people meet their basic needs. And the more housing that we can build, the better for everyone. It creates good jobs, provides security. It's also related to how well kids do in school. Thanks so much for all the work you do. Take care.
Thank you, Jasmine and Representative Strickland. Those are two leaders that I have a feeling we have not heard the last of here at Washington Realtors. Before I turn it over to the next speaker, I want to point out an important website that you should look at. myneighborwa.com. That's myneighborwa.com. That website is the digital backbone of our Hill Day. We have all of our priority legislation on there, along with the presentation that the next presenter is going to give. And because we don't have a way to field all of your questions with so many people virtual, there's actually a feedback form and a question form on there. And know that we will respond to every question and look at every piece of feedback that you have. So as we go through this, know that myneighborwa.com has the slides from this next presenter and a way to contact us. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker. One of the fun parts of leadership is that we are surveying our members all the time. That's Nathan's writing there. I don't know that I think that surveying is the fun part of leadership, but it's an important part of leadership. It brings all the information that comes to WR leadership. Sometimes surveys are long and in-depth, and sometimes they're just a quick check-in for emergency issues. Either way, it's a great way to get the pulse of our membership and to make sure that we are truly speaking for the members. Our next speaker frequently helps us with that. Joe Good is the Chief Executive Officer of American Strategies. Joe conducts public opinion surveys and provides strategic advice to trade associations, nonprofit organizations, and campaigns. For more than 30 years as a pollster, consultant, and executive, Joe has worked closely with the National Association of Realtors since 2007. Providing opinion research, consulting surveys on for more than 40 states and hundreds of locals. Joe recently conducted another survey for our members, and he's here to tell us about it. Joe, welcome to Hill Day.
And good morning, everyone. Again, Joe Good here with American Strategies. I know everybody's tired of people saying this, but I'm sorry we can't meet with you in person. So again, good morning, everyone. As Nathan said and gave a little introduction there, we wanted to share with you the results of the survey that we did of the Washington Realtor members. As Nathan noted, we had a really good participation rate. We started with some phone calls. The poll was conducted right after the election in November. We got a couple hundred done on phone, and then we gave every member a chance to take it online, and hopefully many of you did as well, and you're probably curious to see some of these results. So overall, we had 1,200 members participate. That is a good participation rate. What we do is we weight the data to make sure that it's representative of the membership, so that what happens on these things is some of our more active members tend to take the poll than less active. So we weight it by age and region to make sure that the sample is representative of the actual Realtor membership. And so once we do that, we have basically a margin of error of about plus or minus 4.3 percentage points. So that's the nerdy part, but let's get into the fun part. We're going to start by doing a couple of mood questions about how members feel about the association and politics. We're going to talk about priorities. We're going to talk about some specific legislative issues, and then some tax issues that I know are near and dear to every member's heart, because we all have to go out there and make a living. So let's start with kind of what we call the generic job performance question. As I go through these slides, you're going to see down here at the bottom of the screen, these are the actual questions that members were asked that they heard on the phone or saw on their computer screen. And the job performance question is a straight up, how would you rate the job being done by the Washington Realtors? Excellent, good, just, fair, or poor. And then we asked that about how would you rate the job being done by your local association as well. And you can see by these big fat pie charts, a lot of green, and that's good. Members basically have a very positive perception of the job that the association is doing. 90% excellent or good for the state association, 86% for their local association. Those are really good scores. But what I really want to draw your attention to are these slices over here, the excellent scores. As a pollster, I'm always looking for the intensity, how strongly do people feel about something? And when you get 45% of your members, almost half of your members saying the state association is doing an excellent job, that's a really solid score. I do a lot of polls for state association. This number is usually in the mid 30s to high 30s. In fact, the last time I polled for the Washington Realtors, I think it was back in 2018, you guys were around a 35% excellent score. So you're doing something right. Your members are noticing it. The staff is doing good. Your volunteers are doing it. And you can see that that hard work is reflected here in how your members view the job and rate the job that they see the association, both at the state and local level, doing. Now, the other thing that we wanted to ask about before diving into priorities is kind of, you know that sometimes you talk to your fellow members and they don't seem like they're all that interested in politics. I know you guys all are because you're here for Hill Day. But we did want to ask folks, how important do they feel it is for the Washington Realtors to be involved in state and local legislative and regulatory issues? And once again, you can see that your members greatly appreciate the work that is happening for them at regulatory and policy issues. 97% say it's important. But again, I want to call your attention to the intensity. 66% of your members say it's very important that the Realtor Association is involved in these legislative and policy issues. They may not be all that interested in it, but they do want to know that their state association is representing them and fighting for them on these policy issues. And one last question we did want to ask before getting into some of the priority questions was we wanted to get a sense of how important is a political candidate when you think about political candidates and deciding how to vote compared to other issues. How important to you is a candidate's position on real estate issues? Very important, somewhat important, not too important, or not important at all. And again, you can see that when your members are thinking about who they're going to vote for, real estate issues are important. 45% say it's very important, 43% say somewhat important. Remember, that intensity is not quite as high, but that's still pretty high. Almost half your members, when they're evaluating political candidates, they're evaluating their position on real estate issues. So you can see here that what you're doing politically, educating your members about which candidates are doing which politically and legislatively, all very important things for your members. Even if they're not the most actively engaged or if they're not 100% engaged, they want to know how these candidates are working on real estate issues, and they want to make sure that their views are being represented by the Washington and the local realtor associations. So let's go into legislative priorities. Here's kind of the fun stuff. Remember, this poll was conducted in November, so we were asking people to kind of look ahead to 2021 and say, what's going to be top of mind? So we started with kind of a generic question, what they thought about the state government. We read them a list of concerns. They saw these list of concerns over here on the right-hand side. And we said, just to you personally, which two of these concerns are most important for the governor and the state legislature to focus on? So we got them out of realtor frame of mind, and we just said, when you think about what the state legislature and the governor should be working on, what are the top issues? And you can see right here, and this is true in pretty much every poll I do across the country these days, when you ask people what do they want their government or state legislature or national legislature to be working on, it's jobs and the economy, and it's reducing the spread of COVID-19. And we all know those two are very closely related. And that's how your members feel. When they're just thinking about politics, they want to get the jobs and the economy. They want to get the economy back to where we were last year, a couple of years ago. But I think most of your members know we can't do that until we reduce the spread of COVID-19. So you can see those are the 1 and 2 issues that they want the governor and the legislature to focus on. There's lots of other issues that score in double digits: crime, cost of housing, access to health care. But if we don't do something about these first two, I think it's hard for members to see how we get to paying the attention we need to these other issues. Now, when we switch gears a little bit and we asked members an open-ended question, in other words, we didn't read them any lists. We just said, in your own words, please tell me one or two public policy areas that affect real estate in your job. These should be the top policy areas that you would like your state or local realtor association to focus on. So again, they were volunteering their responses here, and you're going to see some pretty familiar things, and these are going to echo throughout the presentation. Number one and number two, really tied for first, are taxes. Traditionally, that's what we see our members being most affected by and wanting their associations to be most focused on. And then on the Pacific Coast and back on the East Coast, the cost of housing and housing affordability. Those are the top two issues that your members they're focused on to get their job done. That's what they want the association to be focused on. But you can see there's a lot of other issues that are scoring in double digit. Remember, these were volunteered responses. We didn't give them a list to choose from. These are the things that came out of their, out of the top of the head when we were interviewing the phone or when they were typing it in. You can see that COVID-19 is top of mind. You can see, again, jobs in the economy, just like we saw in that previous question, 14% of members said that. We see zoning, racial equity, diversity, fair housing, homelessness, accessible housing. All of those issues are on your members' top of mind. Those are the types of things that they want to see the association working on. You can see how that housing affordability is really manifests itself, not just there, but also in more specific things like zoning, fair housing, homelessness, accessible housing. So that your members have a varied agenda, but again, taxes and housing affordability are the top issues, and then COVID, jobs, and some more of these housing issues come up right after that. Now, what we want to do is, because we know that Nathan and his crew are very busy, we know that your members expect you to be working on lots of issues, not just the things that they can think of when some pollster calls them in the middle of the day asking what are the top of mind things. So we walk them through an exercise. We give them 10 or 11 issues here that we know you're working on, and we say, look, we're going to read you a list of policy areas that the Washington Realtors have been involved in the past. Moving forward, please tell me how high a priority you think each issue area should be on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 meaning the issue is not a priority at all for you right now, and 10 meaning that issue should be the highest priority for you as we're moving forward into 2021. And you can use any number between 0 and 10. So over here on the left-hand side, you see all the issues that we tested. This bar in the middle here represents the percent who gave a score between an 8 and a 10. Remember, those are the most intense feelings. And then the far right-hand side are your mean scores, the overall mean that they gave each of these issues. So you can see your members feel strongly about a lot of issues. Right there at the top, just like when they think about it for the governor and the state legislature, when they're thinking about what Washington Realtors should be focused on, supporting small businesses and protecting jobs. 70% gave that between an 8 and a 10, 8.1 mean score. Your members see, probably some of them experience the hurt that small businesses are happening, and they know how when small businesses are hurting and jobs are hurting, that makes it hard to sell homes, right? So that's top. That's what your members gave the highest score. Right underneath that, real estate taxes and fees, and keeping business taxes low, like the B&O tax. 2/3 of your members, just under 2/3, rated that between an 8 and a 10, and a 7.8 and 7.6 mean score. Traditionally, we see that as a very high issue for our members. But look what's happening right underneath that. All these housing affordability, housing inventory issues, zoning issues really come up to the forefront. Anywhere between, a majority of your members to 4 and 10 are saying that things like home prices and lack of affordable housing options, inventory and lack of homes or condominiums for sale, policies having to do with growth and development. Look at that, 59, 56, and 55% rating that between an 8 and a 10, and that mean score up there at 7.4 to 7.6. So again, you see that housing affordability, housing inventory, some of these fair housing issues, all your members feel very strongly about, that they want the association involved legislatively and in that discussion. Things kind of drop off here beneath that, but that's not to say these aren't important issues. Even when we're talking about things like landlord and tenant issues or opposing rent control, we still have, about 4 and 10 members rating that between an 8 and a 10, and a 6.8, 6.6, 6.0 mean score. Public school funding, environmental policies and practices kind of go out there at the bottom. But again, your members know that these are issues that affect housing, and they are issues that they want to see you involved in. But again, when we're talking about what's really pressing, what they're placing the highest priority on, It's up here at the top. Jobs, taxes, housing affordability, housing availability. Those are the things that are really, I think, going to be driving the agenda for 2021, that your members see these are the issues that really something needs to happen on. Now, just to quantify a little bit more on what the housing inventory, what that means, we ask people, how much of a problem is housing inventory, the number of homes, condominiums, or apartments that are available to buy or rent in your part of Washington right now? Is it a very serious problem, not a serious problem, or not a problem at all? Well, you can see here, 46% say it's a very serious problem, 42% say it's a serious problem. So again, housing inventory, 88% of your members across the state pretty much see housing inventory as either a very serious or a serious problem. It's affecting their ability to get their job done, right? To do their job and to make a living. And not surprisingly, your members are able to make the connection between inventory and prices, supply and demand. So when we ask them how much of an impact does housing inventory have on housing prices in your part of Washington, does it have a huge impact, a big impact, a medium impact, or a small impact? 57% say it has a huge impact, and another 37% say it has a big impact. So I have done some polls in other states where members don't necessarily make the connection between inventory and prices. That's not a problem in Washington. Your members know that low inventory means high prices, and that's something that they see and makes it hard for some of their clients to be able to get into that first home or to that move-up home. Now, the next part of the poll, we wanted to kind of get a sense of your members' support for some issues that have been discussed, some issues that are actively being pursued right now at the legislature, some issues that are being talked about, and whether they favored or opposed each one. So again, over here on the left-hand side are the policy issues that we tested. Over here on the right-hand side are whether they strongly favor that issue or somewhat favored it, and then the total favor number over here on the far right-hand side. So let's walk through some of these and see kind of where the intensity is and how your members are feeling about some of these proposals or activities that Washington Realtors and local associations are involved with. Number one, and that had strong support across the board, was this idea of working on strategies to increase home ownership among people of color and reduce the racial wealth gap. 50% of members strongly favor that, another 36% somewhat favor. Overall, 86% of your members, almost 9 in 10, really support the Realtor Associations being involved in this effort to increase home ownership among people of color and to kind of reduce that race, to help reduce the racial wealth gap. And there's a lot of intensity behind that feeling. As we go down, we're testing a lot of issues that have to do with housing density and some environmental policies that are related to housing density. For example, advocating for infrastructure improvements that make it easier to walk or bike to work, school, or do errands. 34% strongly favor that, another 48% somewhat favor, but again, really universal support among your membership to be working and advocating for infrastructure improvements that make it easier to kind of have those walkable communities. When we get to encouraging local jurisdictions to change zoning laws to allow for more dense developments with a greater variety of housing choices, again, overall, your members strongly supportive of that, 76% favor, but only 1/3 are strongly favoring. And I think that's because your members do know that as these dense developments, that discussion gets a little more touchy when we get into some communities. You get more of that NIMBY thing happening, and you can see that there is very strong support from 1/3 of your members, another 43% who somewhat favor it, but they probably want to know the details a little bit more. Same with advocating for environmentally responsible communities that reduce carbon emissions. Again, very broad support among the membership to advocate for those kinds of communities, but you see the intensity is only at about 32% of members who strongly favor that. Encouraging local jurisdictions to change zoning laws in single-family home neighborhoods to allow for more housing choices like townhomes and condominiums. Again, very broad support, but now you see that intensity dropping down to only 26% who strongly favor it. And again, I think your members can see some of that NIMBYism, some of the arguments, some of the pushback that comes at that at the local level. So, again, they're all for these dense developments, but they also know some of the fights, I think, that happen around them. And then finally, working to ease liability restrictions on condominium developments, 20% strongly favor, overall 68% favor. I think that's probably more a reflection of this lack of intensity, is that some of your members just aren't selling condominiums. They're mostly selling single-family homes. But overall, again, a lot of support for the associations to be involved in those issues and favoring those types of issues. Now, I did want to break out a few of these, just a few interesting demographic breakouts on a couple of these. When we're talking about increasing, trying to work on strategies to increase home ownership among people of color and reduce the racial gap, this is bipartisan support. Support for that is almost universal among Democrats, 98, 99% either strongly or somewhat favor. No real surprise there. But look at our independents, whether you're young, under the age of 50, or older, over the age of 50, 85% support, 49% strongly support. And look at our Republicans, though. Overall, 2/3 to 86% of Republicans support these types of advocating for these kinds of policies. But look at the difference between our younger Republicans and our older Republicans. 31% of younger members who identify as Republicans strongly favor this type of tactic. So again, it's a bipartisan support. Support is stronger among our younger members, but this is something that all members feel very strongly about. This is a good thing to be doing. When we talk about dense development, there's some interesting variation here. As you get into larger firms, you see how intensity tends to increase. Again, there's broad support for this, but as you get into the larger firms with 41 to 100 people office or more than 100 people in the office, you see the intensity really going up. And there's also a lot more support among members who identify themselves as being very active in the association. So that's only about 8 to 10% of members, but our most active, our most informed members are more likely to strongly favor advocating for more dense development. And so that's just an interesting trend that we noticed. And we also saw that same trend when we talked about changing zoning laws. Again, the support's a little soft overall, but when you look at our larger offices and our most active members, you see how that intensity really starts to go up among the members who know the most about the issues, who are most engaged in the issues, tend to have stronger support for it. Now, the last part of the survey, how do we do all these wonderful things? We have to have taxes, right? And this has traditionally been a really, the big area for your members, how to balance that tax load. And especially going into 2021, I know Nathan, your other government affairs experts are going to tell you, government has spent a lot of money on COVID, and they're going to have to go to places to make up that money. You either got to increase taxes or you got to cut services. So we wanted to get a sense from our members, where did they come down on that choice? So we kind of forced them to choose. We read them 2 policy positions and we said, look, these may not describe your feelings exactly, but which side do you come down on? Are you with the state facing a massive budget shortfall? Should the governor and the state legislature having to protect social essential services, even if that means raising taxes? Or are you on the other side? In these tough economic times, the last thing the governor and the state legislature should do is raise taxes, even if it means cuts to some important services and programs. Well, look where your members, they're totally divided on this. 52% come down on the, hey, times are tough. The last thing we should be doing is raising taxes, even if we have to cut some services. But 47% of your members come down the other way. Times are tough. We got to protect some of these essential services, even if that means increasing taxes. So there's no one strong feeling among your members about where to come down on this. The intensity is a little higher over here among your members who feel we shouldn't be raising taxes. But there's very few people who are going to really say, gosh, please go out there and raise my taxes, right? So I don't expect the intensity on this side. But again, this is a tough call. Your members are divided on this, just like, the state's divided on it and the country's divided on this issue of how do we pay for the things that we have to do. So we did want to, and this is, there are partisan differences here. Not surprisingly, our members who identify as Democrats, overwhelmingly, they're over here on the, it's okay to raise taxes because we shouldn't be cutting services. Our Republican members who identify as Republicans, they're down here on the, no, don't raise taxes. Let's be more efficient in our spending and cut services if we have to. But look at our members who identify as independents. They don't identify with either party. Our independent women kind of split on this question, our members, but our men, our male members who identify as independents, they look more like Republicans when it comes to kind of don't raise taxes as opposed to cutting or raising taxes, but don't cut services. So some interesting partisan divides there, but again, indicative of the debate we see nationally anytime taxes come up. So what specific taxes are on the table and how should the state association advocate here. We wanted to give some of the taxes that are being discussed, and we asked our members, okay, we've got this budget deficit. Here's a list of revenue proposals the governor and the state legislature are considering to reduce the state budget deficit. For each, please tell me whether you would like the Washington Realtors to support, oppose, or remain neutral on this revenue proposal. So some interesting results here. The first one, well, these are all tested randomized, but two that your members, or at least half of your members, are sort of open to have to do with a split roll property tax system, allowing different tax rates for properties worth more than $1 million, or a split roll property tax system, allowing different tax rates for residential and non-residential properties. About half of your members say the association should support that. These tend to be your more progressive Democratic members, but again, that's about half of your members who are okay with the association taking that stance. But look over here at our other half. We have another half saying, well, no, just stay out of that fight. Or 33 or 27% saying the association should oppose that type of tax. So again, a split among your membership on that idea. When we start talking about capital gains taxes, capital gains taxes, but one that includes exemptions for all types of real estate, even here, most of your members oppose that type of capital gains tax. 51% say the association should actively oppose that type of capital gains tax. A couple other taxes that were tested, a state rolled payroll tax on high earners paid by employers for each employee who earns $150,000 or more. Again, the plurality of your members feel the association should take a stance against that. 22% say the association should remain neutral. 29% of your members are okay with that kind of tax. But again, if we try another kind of capital gains tax that only allows exemptions for retirement accounts and the homeowner's primary residence, opposition to that goes up to 55%. And if we talk about an increase in the business and occupation tax, also known as the B&O tax, 74% of your members believe the association should actively oppose that kind of tax. So that's an easy call for Nathan. Most of your members say disagree with that. The rest of it are going to require some solemn, some wisdom beyond and a lot of discussion, I think, as your members are a little more divided on some of those other taxes, although they do lean against any increase in the capital gains tax. Now, the other taxes that are out there that are being discussed that very directly affect members are transportation. The governor and the legislature are also talking about specific proposals to fund transportation infrastructure. And again, we gave that same exercise. Should the association support that tax, remain neutral, or oppose it? Again, some interesting results. A carbon tax charged to gasoline and diesel fuel producers and other large corporations based on the amount of carbon emissions they produce. A plurality, 47% of your members feel that, yeah, the association should support that. But over here, you have 33% who say the association should oppose it, another 20% who say stay out of it. Cap and trade plan. I know it's gotten a lot of debate and conversation out there. Look where your members are here. 1/3 say support, 1/3 say stay out of it, 1/3 say oppose it. So again, a lot of division among your members on the idea of a cap and trade plan. But when we talk about increasing the state gas tax, 64% of your members say the association should actively oppose the increase in the state gas tax. And another proposal that's been out there is a new tax. Because the state gas tax has been declining over the last 20 years, we gave them a little more information on this one. And we said the state's looking for some new funding sources. One proposal is to charge a small fee for every mile driven in Washington state. And then should the state association oppose or favor that? 69%, a very strong majority say the state association should actively oppose that. So that's a lot of numbers that I've shared with you. A lot of graphs. My understanding is that Nathan has made this available to you on a website that you can download this presentation and dig into your heart's desire. You can send Nathan or his staff questions. I'll be happy to answer those. But what I would say your takeaway from this is your members are very appreciative. They believe the association at both the state and local are doing a very good job, as evidenced by those job performance numbers. Your members want the association to be involved in these political issues. They take them seriously when they're evaluating which types of candidates to vote for. As you're looking at the issue agenda for the year ahead, it's going to be jobs, it's going to be taxes, it's going to be housing inventory and affordability. You saw how strongly your members feel about some of those issues. You have a very varied issue agenda, but they're all going to get back to jobs, taxes, COVID at some level lurking in the background, and housing inventory. But when we get to the taxes, you can see that your members are a little more split on the issue of taxes and how to pay for some of these things. Easy opposition, I think, to things like an increase in the B&O tax, increase in the gas tax, or increase in the miles tax. Lean against any increase in the capital gains tax, but some of the other ones, you can see how your members were divided. Legislatively, again, your members very supportive of that efforts to increase homeownership among people of color and addressing that equity issue. And you saw lots of support for more dense, environmentally sound developments, although, again, the intensity not quite as strong on that. Some of your members feeling very strongly about it, some of your members being supportive, but probably wanting to know more of the details. So, hope that was instructive. Nathan, I'm going to turn it back to you and leave it at that.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate your help as we try to figure out what 20,000 plus members are thinking. It's a huge job, and you're always a tremendous help to us. Again, I know after all of that data, there's going to be questions and comments that you guys have. And make sure that you go to look at that presentation again to myneighborwa.com. Click on the feedback form and submit your questions or your comments on the virtual Hill Day form. Thanks again, Joe. We appreciate it. Now, I want to bring up the professor, or as you know him, Steve Franks, Washington Realtors CEO. Steve always gives us his unique perspective on where we are, usually done through the lens of history. So, Steve, take it away.
Hello, Realtors. As many of you know, for the past several years, I've taken this opportunity at Hill Day to speak directly to hundreds of Realtors and take you along on a walk through history to see what lessons we as Realtors can learn from the past. This year, I've thought a lot about what to say in light of the crisis our nation is facing. And we are in a crisis. That's obvious to everyone. But what do I say when events are happening at a dizzying pace? Every day, every hour, there's a new headline. And I am making this video on January 14th, almost a full week before you're seeing it. So I apologize in advance for anything that is outdated or doesn't seem to fit as you are watching this on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2021. So this idea that, I don't know what's going to happen a week from now, never mind a year from now, it caused me to remember something that I had read not too long ago about one of the challenges that historians face when trying to recreate the story of what happened in our collective past. And that is this, that when we look back on history, we know what happened. We know how it turned out. But the people who actually lived through those times of crisis, they didn't know. They had no idea what was going to happen or how it would turn out. Sometimes, looking back, it looks to us that these historical events are inevitable. But folks, there was no guarantee the North was going to win the Civil War, right? So I've looked back at other examples of other times of crises, both from American history and around the world, and when great decisions were made and history turned on the outcome. So here's some of the examples that I thought about. I thought about Dwight D Eisenhower on the night of June 5th, 1944, the night before D-Day. And he had the sole and final and awesome responsibility to decide whether to launch that invasion in the face of bad weather, when that could have been catastrophic, not just for the men involved in the invasion, but for the whole war effort. And he didn't know it was going to succeed. And in fact, I have seen at the National Archives the actual handwritten note that General Eisenhower wrote, taking full and sole and personal responsibility for the failure of the landings. And then I thought in that same time period, when I thought about England in 1940 during World War II, when Hitler's blitzkrieg had conquered most of Europe with terrifying speed, and England stood alone against the barbaric threat of Nazism, of the SS and the Gestapo and the camps. That was one of the world's darkest hours, never mind England's. And I also thought of Mahatma Gandhi and the racist experiences that he endured as a young lawyer in South Africa, and how those experiences led to his determination to pursue the nonviolent tactics of civil disobedience and bring them back to India when he returned in 1915 and led a decades-long drive for independence from the British Empire. That wasn't guaranteed. Why would anyone believe that such a frail and unimposing man could successfully organize such a mass movement, a world-changing movement? So each of those events, to me, have this in common. The results turned on the collective action of people, the individual deeds and decisions of actual human beings, not historical stick figures. So I'm talking about those paratroopers on D-Day who jumped out of low-flying aircraft into the darkness and the shells and the bullets, and they landed and they were lost and disorganized, but somehow they managed to assemble and fight. And I think about those Rangers who climbed the sheer cliffs at Pont du Hoc under a rain of hand grenades and machine gun bullets from the Germans atop those cliffs. How did they get to the top? And of course, you think about those incredibly brave men and boys who landed at Omaha Beach under murderous fire, and somehow they managed one by one to get off that beach and save the day. Folks, I've been to Omaha Beach, and if any of you have, and you stand there on Omaha Beach and you look at that and you say, the first thing that comes to your mind is, how did these guys get off that beach? Each and every one of those men made history. And then earlier in the war, in 1940, during the Battle of Britain, victory turned largely on the success of the Royal Air Force, particularly a very small group of fighter pilots. When the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, tried to bomb England into submission during what came to be known as the Blitz, well, that small group of pilots flew countless missions, day after day, often multiple times during the course of the day, to fight off the Germans and keep Britain alive. They saved the day. And as Churchill said very famously, never has so much been owed by so many to so few. And those men, they are revered, they are storied, and they are still known as the few. Now in India, history didn't turn so much on individual heroes thrust into the violence of combat, but on mass demonstrations of huge numbers of ordinary Indians. And to put things in perspective, for example, in 1930, the British arrested about 60,000 Indians during a 241-mile march that Gandhi had organized called the Salt March, which was a protest. The sources that I've looked at indicate that at least another 100,000 Indians were arrested during the course of Gandhi's campaign of nonviolent civil disobedience. All of those ordinary Indians made individual decisions to believe in Gandhi and believe in his tactics and believe in the cause and follow his lead, and eventually they drove the British out. Now, another thing that no one could have foreseen during Gandhi's efforts was that his example, Gandhi's example, would inspire or help to inspire the man we just honored a couple of days ago, Dr. Martin Luther King. As Dr. King brought those ideas and ideals of civil disobedience and nonviolence and nonviolent protest to the United States. So to Gandhi, nonviolence was more than just simply agreeing that you won't physically attack your enemy. Gandhi referred to his form of nonviolence as, and I'm going to get this pronunciation wrong, but satyagraha, meaning truth force or love force. Practicing satyagraha means a person should seek truth and love while refusing through nonviolent resistance to participate in something she believes to be wrong. And this had a tremendous influence on Dr. King, who later wrote, quote, "I came to see for the first time that the Christian doctrine of love, operating through the Gandhian method of nonviolence, was one of the most potent weapons available to oppressed peoples in their struggle for freedom, end quote. So, okay, another Hill Day tradition, and those of you who are returning, you know it, and those of you who are new, you're learning it, is that somewhere during the course of my talk, you start saying to yourself, okay, Steve, interesting stuff, thank you for sharing, but where are you going with all this? What's your point? That's probably right about now. So here's my point, and that is, in times of crisis or turning points in history, things don't just happen. People make history. People make things happen. And now, as we, as Americans, as we face multiple crises of self-governance and political violence, of racial injustice, of an economy with growing unemployment and economic desperation impacting millions of Americans disproportionately across the country, and of course of a pandemic, as we face all of these shattering challenges, we have a choice. We can be bystanders to history, or we can make personal and organizational commitments to make history, to be an active participant in how things turn out. So now, speaking for myself, and only for myself, not as the CEO of Washington Realtors, my individual choice for thinking about and moving forward with the crisis in governance that we're facing was defined and formed back when I was a little boy. And when I first really started understanding the bravery of my father, who flew 30 missions over Germany in a B-17 as a ball turret gunner, and trying to understand and appreciate the incredible bravery and service of millions of men and women who have served this country over the centuries of our existence, including my brother, who served 3 tours in Vietnam as a U.S. Army Ranger. So think about what that means. And then as I grew up and as a youth and as a young man, as I immersed myself in American history, I emerged with a deep and enduring love for my country and what it stands for. I believe in America. I believe in democracy. And it is my personal commitment that I will continue to support and believe that the sacred right of Americans to choose their leaders through the vote should be celebrated and not suppressed, that all lawful votes should be counted, and that we should respect the results of our free and fair and certified elections and the decisions of the courts. And if you lose, if your side loses, and trust me, my side has lost a lot in my lifetime, then you accept it and you come back next time to make your case to the people. That's America to me, but that's just me. So now, turning to one of the other defining issues of our time, and frankly, not just of our time, but of our entire history as a nation, which is the ongoing struggle for racial equality, we as an organization have made decisions. So later on, you'll be hearing in some of our other presentations about some of our legislative efforts, for example, including more comprehensive measures to remove racist language from title. We, Washington Realtors, are also committed to many more initiatives relating to fair housing and diversity, equity, and inclusion that we use as shorthand, DEI. So when you hear DEI, that's what I'm referring to, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So recently, the Washington Realtor Executive Committee revised our strategic plan, and it now includes, about 15 significant initiatives, not just on fair housing, but on DEI, both within our own association and also the larger real estate industry. So these include ongoing education for our members about the history of systemic racial segregation in housing and our role, the Realtors' role, in perpetuating it, as well as our efforts to try and address it, as well as how to recognize and overcome implicit bias in our own lives and in our businesses. Some of our companies have been taking the lead on their own in these areas, and we've worked with them, and we stand ready to continue to work with our companies, our designated brokers, and our local associations on that whole education piece of fair housing and DEI. But one of our initiatives that I want to focus on today and share with you is for Washington Realtors to take the lead on developing a campaign to promote real estate as a career to persons of color and other underrepresented communities. And we will very shortly be doing focus groups around the state, and some of you who are watching this presentation may be asked to participate. But we're going to ask some folks to help Washington Realtor leadership gain a better perspective and fuller insights and understanding into the barriers to entry that those groups face and the kind of support that companies and associations can provide to help those new realtors succeed. And then we expect to develop messages and strategies for an outreach program, an outreach campaign to help our companies recruit all that great new talent that may have never even considered the tremendous benefits, both financial and in terms of career satisfaction, that a career in real estate offers, and that every one of you know full well what I'm talking about. Now, I've spoken directly with the top leadership and owners of some of our largest companies around the state, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Probably best summed up as, "That's a great idea, Steve. Really glad Washington Realtors is doing it. And can you get started on it yesterday?" Okay, so we will be moving forward with this. So as I wrap things up, let me finish by by noting this. Our entire top leadership for the next few years is committed to all of these efforts that I've described. From past President Kitty Wallace to President-elect Sherry Daniels to First Vice President Alicia Harrison. The commitment is deep and it's strong. And of course, our current president, Tom Hormel, is taking the lead, driving these things forward. But I want to tell you that I've heard Tom, and some of you I'm sure have too, speak many times about how we should work together in the coming year. And he uses words like respect and civility and kindness. And he asks us to, look at our jobs and our life from a position of gratitude. And I'm sure we'll hear more from Tom on that as the year goes on. But for our purposes now, on this topic, I've heard Tom and other realtors too recognize that America, we're not really a melting pot as much as a mosaic with the sparkling individuality of cultures and experiences coming together to form a truly beautiful whole. But again, it's great to have commitment from the top, but all of us can and should be making our individual decisions and choices in all of these areas. And here's why that's so important. We've heard from several speakers this year, both within Washington Realtors and at NAR, that real estate probably is best positioned or better positioned than almost any other industry sector to have an impact in these areas because in our country, wealth begins with the land, right? Individual ownership of private property. You heard Dr. Quintard Taylor from the University of Washington talk about that when he spoke to our members back in the spring. And I know I've heard speakers at NAR say the same thing. And that's why, because we are in a position to do so much good, that's why it's so gratifying that, as you saw from our member survey that Joe Good presented earlier, there is overwhelming support, very strong support, I say it's overwhelming, from our membership for strategies to expand home ownership opportunities to minority communities so that we can help eliminate the racial wealth gap that exists in this country. So collectively, yeah, we can make things better. Now, we know that we're imperfect, we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to keep pushing it forward. So that, folks, when the history of these times that we're living through right now is written, when we finally learn how all this turned out, I hope that all of us can say that we weren't bystanders, but that we played a part, and that we can look back and say that we were on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Now we're going to go live to our Olympia studio at the Washington Realtors office, just a few blocks from the Capitol building, and our Government Affairs Director, Nathan Gordon, is going to tell us about our legislative priorities. Nathan will be joined by Kitty Wallace, our immediate past president, from the Spokane studio at the same time. So take it away, Nathan.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. Kitty, good morning. How are you? How are things in Spokane?
Actually, things are great here in Spokane, Nathan. It's a balmy 30 degrees outside. The sun is glistening on the snow-covered mountains. It's a great day here in Spokane.
Great. Well, I appreciate having you there, mostly to try to keep Tom in line, which is a big job. We're going to talk about our Hill Day bills in just a second. But Kitty, I first want to take just a moment to say I was talking to the Women's Council of Realtors the other day, and I mentioned that I don't think you've gotten the credit you deserve for being president in a very tough time and a great president. You handled challenging circumstances and you did it with grace and class. So thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate that.
All right, should we talk about Hill Day bills?
Let's do it.
All right, we have 4 bills to talk about today that are really going to be focusing on the priorities we just heard from Joe Good. While none of them are a silver bullet to solve those issues once and for all, we do feel like they help us make it closer to the goal. All of these bills, along with a list of sponsors and co-sponsors, can be found on our Hill Day website, www.myneighborwa.com. There's also a form there where you can give us feedback on the bills or ask us questions. In fact, I've already gotten the first question, so please keep those questions coming. So first, we're going to talk about redacting racial covenants on title. Kitty, I really liked your comments on this issue that you made to close out our fall conference. Can you tell the people here who may not have heard you then why we're working on this issue?
Yeah, absolutely, Nathan. We talk about advocating for homeownership for all. We talk about fair housing. These are realtor issues, and when you have racial covenants on a title, that's preventing someone from being able to become a homeowner, and that is a realtor issue. And if we're going to advocate the way we want to advocate homeownership for everyone, we have to be proactive and do everything we can to get that removed.
And thank you, Kitty. I completely agree. And that's why we're working with Representative Valdez and Representative Rude on House Bill 1335. So this bill picks up where a bill that we worked with former Representative Christine Kilduff left off. So for those of you who, most of us are aware of this issue, but there are some neighborhoods, some homes in very old neighborhoods in Washington, all over the state, that have racial covenants on title, right? Racist covenants on title, saying you cannot sell this home to somebody with black skin. You cannot sell this home to somebody of Jewish descent. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court has deemed that these racial covenants are not enforceable, but that doesn't make it any easier to see this language on title. So a few years ago, we worked with Representative Kilduff because prior to her bill, you would have to hire an attorney and go to court to get that language redacted. So we worked with her so that all you had to do was fill out a very simple one-page form with your county auditor, and that language would be redacted at no cost to the homeowner. That's a great bill. We really appreciate working with Representative Kilduff on it, but it's kind of a passive bill. The homeowner needs to know that language is on their title. They need to know about the program. And if they don't know those two pieces, that language will remain. So House Bill 1335 and Senate Bill to be determined, it will have a Senate companion, but that'll probably drop tomorrow, is a review and notification of racial covenants. Essentially what this bill does is it requires local jurisdictions as part of their comprehensive plan update to map out areas in their jurisdiction that have these racial covenants on title and notify homeowners in those areas of the racial covenants, along with the process to redact them. We think that this is a good step forward and a really solid second step, kind of picking up where Representative Kilduff's bill took us, and we're excited to have this bill this session.
Yeah, Nathan, it's a great bill. So just to be clear, we're asking our House and Senate members for their support on this bill when we're talking to them, right? And if they have questions about the bill, or members have questions or comments about the bill, they can fill out a form on our www.myneighborwa.com. It's a great bill, and I'm super excited about it. Nathan, what else do we have coming on?
Great. Let's talk a little bit about condominium development. We're going to continue on the success we have built on condo liability reform. Many of you know one of our great lobbyists, Bill Clark, who's worked very hard with Senator Jamie Peterson and Senator Mike Padden and a few of our members, Michael Urbino, Eddie Chang, and Bill Riley on this issue. There is no doubt about it. Because of these 6 folks, they're really the reason why this issue has any traction. We have another condo bill from Senators Padden and Peterson that will continue our work to encourage more condo production, this time focused on smaller condo units, 10 units or less. So Senate Bill 5024, prime sponsor Senator Padden, and then Senator Peterson as a co-sponsor. So here's what this bill does. For buildings under 10 units and 2 stories, provides an exemption from a requirement to conduct the building envelope inspection during the construction process. Currently, this type of inspection must occur a number of times and is difficult to obtain. You have to, in many cases, you have to fly in a specialized inspector. And the 10 unit, 2 stories threshold basically means what you're doing is you're using the same construction methods as you would to build a single family home. And the point is, if you're essentially building a single family home, albeit maybe a large single family home, you shouldn't have to have all of these extra requirements that add cost to building the condo unit, ultimately adding cost to each unit. That's the first thing it does. The second thing that this bill does is, this is for all condos. It allows the deposit amount when a buyer puts in a deposit on a condo, right? A deposit as opposed to a down payment, right? This is the deposit that somebody puts in for a future condo. And it allows the developer to use 10% of that deposit to build that specific condominium, right? We think that this is a common sense way to lower cost for developers, thus lowering the cost on the condominium units. Now, I've been all over the state. Well, I've been Zooming all over the state talking about this bill. And the number one question I get is, well, what about consumer protection? We want to make sure that that developer can't walk off with that money. So it's a great point. Keep in mind that, that the developer still has to get a surety bond to protect the buyer's deposit amount. So there still is that consumer protection piece in this bill.
Great. That's great news on condos, Nathan. But how about us in rural areas?
Yeah, great question for those of you who mostly deal in our rural areas. We also have a bill for you. So we are going to be talking today about Senate Bill 5221. And the prime sponsor on that is Senator Gilden. And he's actually a realtor himself and a new senator. We're excited to have him in the Senate. And then Senator Marco Lias. And this bill also, by the way, we don't have a slide for this because this just happened. It has a House companion as well, House Bill 1298, and that's Reps Vick and Springer. And that House Bill 1298 is actually up on the website. So if you want to see that, it's up on the website. But this bill deals with rural areas and growth in GMA counties. It makes it clear that accessory dwelling units are allowed in rural areas and do not count towards density requirements. There are some rural areas that, based off of ambiguous language in Washington state law right now, do not allow accessory dwelling units. We think that we need to clarify the law and say that accessory dwelling units are in fact allowed, and they should be a tool for affordable housing in rural areas, just like they are in our urban areas.
That's awesome news for our rural buyers who want more options with their property, Nathan. Super excited about that bill for my neck of the woods. What's our fourth bill?
I have a slide, Kitty. It's House Bill 1157. Representative Bateman and Representative Gilday. Representative Bateman, they're both freshman legislators, and Representative Bateman is coming to us from the city of Olympia, actually, where she was a city council member and worked really heavily on their missing middle policies to build more missing middle housing. And Rep. Gilday, also a realtor, coming to us from the 10th Congressional District, which is kind of the Woodby Island area, and brand new realtor serving in the House. And we're happy to work with both of them. So this bill allows local jurisdictions to choose an area of their city and upzone that area for what we tend to call missing middle housing. Things like duplexes, triplexes, condominiums, cottage housing. And as an incentive to do that, they get to keep a portion of the state real estate excise tax on the sale of every unit in that area in perpetuity. This is a very clear financial incentive for our local jurisdictions who really ultimately control housing supply. It's a really strong incentive for them to continue to build more housing, and especially housing that is really affordable for first-time homeowners. We're excited about this bill, House Bill 1157. Please advocate for that with your legislators.
Great, Nathan. So let's do a little bit of recap. Today, we're advocating to have a better, more thorough process to redact racist language from title, encourage more condominium construction, and help for our rural housing and build more opportunity for first-time home buyers in different type of housing in our urban jurisdictions. Sounds like we have a super full agenda that matches up with exactly what our members were asking for. I have heard some news about some tax issues and landlord-tenant issues on the radar this year. Why aren't we talking about those, Nathan?
Yeah, great question. I've gotten an email or two from our members very concerned about tax issues, landlord-tenant issues, and there are a lot of those issues coming to the surface right now. So here is the general idea and the general strategy that the GA team has come up with, and this has been blessed by the Washington Realtors leadership. We've been successful about this in the past. You know, both of those topics, leadership in the legislature is going to be very, very involved with. So what we're doing is we feel like that is what we would call a leadership play, right? Or we're going to work very heavily with the leadership in all four caucuses, although really in the majority caucuses, Senate Democrats, House Democrats, on these issues to make sure that they get resolved in a way that is not harmful to our members and your clients. These other issues that we're talking about today, those four issues, I think they're just as important as the tax issues, but these are more rank and file issues, and we need the rank and file legislators to support these issues. So the strategy is that we have 650 people here today. That's great. We hope you all talk to your legislators about these four issues, and then please don't lose any sleep over it. The GA team is absolutely on top of the tax issues and the landlord-tenant issues. We'll keep working on those issues, and we'll report back. What do you think, Kitty?
That makes sense, Nathan, and great on the work that we've got coming down the pipeline today. So if people have questions or comments on a bill, or the legislators have questions or comments, again, they can go to www.myneighborlaw.com. So Nathan, can we close out this part of our Hill Day with a video from a legislator making fun of one of our friends and realtors, Eric Johnson from Spokane?
Kitty, 2 words, roll tape.
Hi, I'm State Representative Marcus Riccelli from Spokane. I want to welcome you all to your 2021 Virtual Legislative Day. I want to express my thanks to the Washington Realtors Association for the support of my 2020 re-election, along with the support and engagement on behalf of a number of important races throughout our state. More importantly, I want to thank you for your involvement in the legislative process as we work to improve and perfect existing policies and work through new legislation that is introduced. I applaud you for adapting to such challenging times and your work to meet the needs of buyers and sellers during and after that pandemic. Nobody can thrive without a roof over their head. And now a home is also a classroom, an office, and a place of safety and security in such uncertain times. A big congrats to Spokane's own Tom Hormel for taking on the role of Washington Realtors State President. Good luck in your new adventure, and we know that all good things come from Spokane. Am I right? Shout out to my neighbor and friend Eric Johnson, or more like a congrats to all of you for putting up with him? Just kidding. A robust democracy can only exist with an active and engaged citizenry. Thank you all for being engaged in communities across Washington and for doing your part. My best wishes for a successful day on the virtual Hill.
Thanks, Nathan, and thank you, Kitty. What Nathan doesn't know is Kitty was actually put in that segment to keep Nathan in line, not to keep me in line. Thank you also, Representative Riccelli. I definitely agree that all good things come from Spokane. Now I get the honor to introduce a fantastic realtor volunteer, James Fisher. James serves on our Realtor Political Action Committee and helps us decide where the PAC money we raise gets spent. He's going to interview 2 senators on a previously recorded Zoom call. We are excited to have James as an up-and-coming leader in our association. So take it away, James.
Tom, thank you for that introduction. I'm happy to be part of this Hill Day. Good morning. I'm James Fisher, and I'm a realtor with Windermere Professional Partners in Tacoma. I've been a realtor for 4 years, and in addition to being a realtor, I serve on the Realtors Political Action Committee Board, which means I get to help steer the organization and the organization's money to candidates, both Democrat and Republican, who are realtor-friendly. Today, I get to interview 2 senators who both received a boost in their race from the Realtor PAC. Let's hear from them about the role our PAC played in their election. Senators, please take a moment to introduce yourselves. Tell us what you do when you're not a senator, the district you represent, and where that district is in the state.
Yeah, I'm Mark Mullet. I represent the 5th Legislative District. I'm from Issaquah, so I'm East King County. And outside of the legislature, I own a pizza restaurant called Zeke's Pizza, which is just a local Seattle area only pizza place. And then 3 Ben & Jerry's ice cream stores, one in Issaquah, one in Bell Square, and one in kind of downtown Kirkland area. And so I don't go to my restaurants during session, but outside of session, I am there 5 days a week. So,
thank you. Senator Dozier.
Good morning. Yes, good morning. I'm Perry Dozier. I represent the 16th District, which comprises 4 counties. It's Columbia County, Walla Walla County, and the south part of Benton County, and a small portion of Franklin County. Prior to being elected as senator, I farmed my entire life, but I also served 2 terms as a Walla Walla County commissioner from 2009 through 2016. And other than being a senator, when I'm in my off time, I will enjoy getting back home and putting the rat race away and going back to farming.
Perfect. Thank you. And Senators, tell us a little bit about your race. We'll get into the independent expenditure portion in just a second, but quickly tell us who you were running against and how it played out in your eyes.
Yeah, my race was unique. It was a D-on-D race. So I first got elected in 2012, so I was running for my 3rd term. A Republican had filed against me. He ended up backing out after he filed. So I think the more he talked to other Republicans and folks in the business community, he realized I was in the moderate end of the political spectrum. But I did have a challenger from the far left, and the end result was I only won by 58 votes. It was the closest Senate race in the entire state. It was the closest legislative race we've had in King County in decades in terms of the vote count.
Yeah, that is very close margins there. And Senator Dozier?
Yeah, my race was very unique in that I was running against another fellow Republican, a Republican that was actually one of our House representatives from the 16th District who chose to run for the Senate position. So he and I were running against a very well-funded Democrat. And it was a difficult primary for me. I knew to be able to make it, I needed to have to probably win on the Republican side, which was going to be an issue of splitting votes with my Republican challenger, knowing that neither one of us would come out with the majority of votes, most likely the way our district is set up. So my main concern running in my campaign was only focused on August 3rd, not looking beyond that, because I knew that that was the one day I had to get past to be able to sit over here in Olympia.
Thank you for that. And, you know, to touch on independent expenditures, many people in the audience may not be familiar with what an independent expenditure is or how it works. I think the most important thing is that the independent part means you both can't legally know about it before it happens. How does that work? And how does that feel when you see an independent expenditure just show up out of thin air?
Well, I think that in my case, you can only donate $2,000 to a candidate, $1,000 for the primary, $1,000 for the general. Independent expenditures, because they're not allowed to coordinate with the campaigns, they can have open-ended spending. And I think the far left groups in Seattle who are very frustrated that I don't support their policies, you know, and they put $2.2 million in my general, you know, against me as an independent expenditure. So obviously my candidate she didn't raise that amount of money, the person I was running against, my opponent. But once she had that amount of money there, it's kind of like I was extremely grateful when I saw independent expenditures showing up on my behalf. If they had not, it would have made my life extremely challenging, because they definitely showed up to take me out. So there's definitely a lot of independent expenditures to have me removed from office. So that's kind of how it played out in my race.
And Senator Dozier, how about for you? How did it feel when you saw the independent expenditure show up?
It was very, very enlightening to see the support for myself. Again, like I said, I was running against I would term an incumbent in one sense, my Republican challenger, and a very strong Democrat. The amount of money that was raised, again, by my Democratic challenger was unprecedented. And knowing that the COVID situation that we had, it was difficult to fundraise, and trying to get our message out there in a way to do it. And that was one of our biggest struggles. And when we were able to see that funding come in, it was a tremendous boost for us on our campaign. And it was very, very welcomed.
We like hearing that. Thank you. And, you know, here's a very important to our membership, a question very important to our membership. What impact do you think the Realtors independent expenditure had on your race?
I can say in my race, I mean, I won by 58 votes. If the Realtors had sat on their ass and not got involved in my race, I would have lost. I mean, it's that simple. I think the argument I was told when I was elected in 2012 as a Democrat, they said if you don't support the labor unions and these groups, when you're up for re-election, you will lose, because you're never going to get support from the business community. They're only, you know, labor is the only place where Democrats can find support in their re-election efforts. So I advise you to support their agenda 100%. And the reality is, if that was true, I wouldn't be here right now. The only reason I've survived is because of folks like the Realtors were able to stand up to support a moderate Democrat in a re-election effort, and it made the world a difference.
You know, right now there are hundreds of Realtors watching this for our virtual Hill Day. What is your message for them?
I think my message is appreciate the importance you have with your own local elected officials. Like, it's not that difficult to reach out to your House reps or your senator, and I think that my experience has been the more you have like an individualized message. The Realtors have a group message, but you reaching out on your own as well, I think is extremely valuable, and having those relationships. And I know for me, if, you know, being in the Democratic caucus, I want, you know, people, even if they're Republicans, to feel like they're reaching out to their Democratic senators in a way to make sure their Democratic senators understand the things that are important to them, because that makes my job a lot easier in the caucus to say, trust me, this is important. And they're like, well, no one's told me about it. Well, hopefully I want to make sure you guys are letting them know about it.
Thank you. Senator Dozier?
Yeah, I think communication with the elected officials is extremely important, working with our realtors. Whether it's at this stage of being a senator or a rep, when I was a county commissioner, we deal a lot with land use and growth management, and knowing and working closely with the Realtors Association as we move further into developing areas, I think that's where that relationship will be strong, and I think it will be help in the future for all of us as elected officials to know what direction we need to go.
As you know, the Realtors have been working with housing affordability over the last few years, very much so. We've had many TV ads run last year, and right now with historically low inventory levels, what's currently being done in the legislature to help combat this affordability crunch that many residents of the state are feeling?
And that's the $1 million question. I think to look at it from a macro perspective, I would say if you think about, like, to use an analogy, the drinking age used to be different in every state. And the federal government couldn't force everyone to go to the same drinking age in terms of alcohol. It happened because it was tied to your federal highway funds. So eventually, state by state, everyone went to 21 because no one wanted to lose the money. I honestly firmly believe that we have to have a similar attempt in Olympia to say, hey, we're going to, as a state, partner with local jurisdictions to help with planning, but the trade-off is going to be, if you want our money to help with hiring extra planning, permitters to speed up design approval, et cetera, you're going to have to start playing ball with some of the things that we know are important for making sure more private dollars flow in to build residential housing. And the bill, for example, I'm doing this session, it's a $10 million grant program in the capital budget. It says if you're by a transit hub, you can apply for a $250,000 grant to have the state pay for SEPA around that transit hub. But the trade-off is, if you do that, you're going to have density in that zone around the transit hub. And we're once again facing the political reality of it's really hard to jam people on the local control issue, because a lot of people are like Senator Dozier and myself, they came from local government. So we try to not jam them. But at the same time, we've got to start to put enough money behind these grant programs that every city and county feels like they're doing a disservice to their local community if they don't start changing their local policies on permitting to get access to these grant funds. So the days of just pushing out money just because we love you, I think should be replaced by, we're going to push out money, but there's a trade-off here. And part of that trade-off is we want permitting and zoning requirements that are going to make sure that private residential dollars are flowing into the state of Washington with enough force that we can actually start to build the housing that we need.
Perfect. Thank you. And Senator Dozier?
Well, obviously on the state level, not being involved with it here yet, I can't really offer a lot of expertise on that. But from the county level, I think Senator Mullet said it well, that it's working with our county leaders and city leaders on, is there an issue with zoning? Density is a huge issue for affordable housing. Are we able to look into the Growth Management Act? Are we able to maybe change some of our zoning requirements? The grant money that's going to be hopefully out there to help with that, and the expertise coming from our planners. A lot of small counties don't have the funding available to be able to go and do that. One of the things we looked at on a lower level is, okay, do we have any county-owned property, or is there state-owned property there that can be somehow purchased or transferred at a lower rate? Because the cost of real estate, just the dirt itself in our area, is very expensive. It's hard to have affordable housing when you have to spend so much money just to build it. So if we don't have to, if the county or the city doesn't have to purchase that, but can somehow transfer that in, get the grants to build it, have the density there, then I think we would be able to help solve some of the affordable housing issues and more housing for our residents.
Thank you, Senator Dozier. I know it was a very complex question, so thank you for crunching that down and making it palatable for us. And one final very important question. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Okay, so this is clearly the response to improve the ratings. I said you needed juicier questions, so I don't know. I think if I saw a horse-sized duck, I don't know. I think I might crap my pants. So I think I'd rather take on like a bunch of miniature horses. It wouldn't put the same fear of God into me. It's hard for me to be afraid of something that I can step on.
Yeah, truly, and like you said, it's like a marathon in your role, so, might as well take on the 100. How about you, Senator Dozier?
Well, I can tell you we had a large pet goose that got a little bit aggressive with me to where I was running from it, and his bite was really bad when I got bit by him. So I'd rather have the smaller ones. They're just little bitty bites, and I could survive a lot of small ones versus that one big chomp.
Definitely. Well, Senators Mullet and Dozier, thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us. We really appreciate getting to know you, the independent expenditure process, and your theory on duck fights a little bit better. Thank you, Tom. We'll take it back to you.
That was great. Thank you, James, for that. Those were just a few elected officials that we were able to help in 2020, but we helped so many more. Here are a few thank yous for some others that we helped. And you'll notice two things. First, we need to work on helping them pronounce the word realtor. To quote my friend Susan Cooper, we don't go to a docator, so they should not go to a realtor. Second is some of these legislators know what 30 seconds means, and to others, they have a tougher time with that. So with that, roll the video.
Hi, Washington State Realtors. This is State Representative Jacqueline Maycumber. I want to thank you for supporting me during this campaign season, and thank you for all you're doing for the people of Washington State. I know this is a difficult time, and I know that you have come together and really helped a lot of people. So once again, thank you from State Representative Jacqueline Maycumber.
Dear you, representing the 32nd LD, thank you, Realtors, for your endorsement and support of my re-election to the House. I'm happy to be chairing the new Community and Economic Development Committee, and I look forward to working with you to help us recover from this pandemic and to rebuild our economy. Thank you.
Your support, organization, and advocacy certainly has meant a lot to me personally, to members of the 25th Legislative District, and all of Washington State. The work that you do does not go unnoticed, and it matters. Thank you for what you do. Keep it up.
Hi there. Hi, I'm Mia Gregerson, State Representative from the 33rd Legislative District. That serves the cities of Burien and Kent, SeaTac, Normandy Park, Renton, some Incorporated, and Des Moines. So thanks for participating in the virtual Hill Day. I'm really sad that we're not able to see each other in person like we usually do, but I'll be excited to see you next year. And you can always contact any of our offices. I want to pay recognition and thank you for being politically active during this time. When you come together with shared voices and values, it really helps us do the work of the people. Thanks again for your support on additional dwelling units. If we get our job done, we'll have another bill for you to support here very soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Hello, Realtors. My name is Greg Gilday, and I've been a proud Realtor for going on 8 years now. I'm also a practicing attorney and a board member for a local title and escrow company. Most recently, though, I was elected as a state representative for Washington's 10th Legislative District. I'm making this video today because I want to say thank you. Washington Realtors and NAR provided tremendous support during my campaign, and your support was crucial because I won my campaign by less than 900 votes. It was really close. I look forward to working with Realtors in the upcoming session on common sense housing solutions, as well as helping out small businesses. And even though we're going to be in a virtual session this year, please feel free to reach out to me or my office if you have any questions or issues you'd like to talk about. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.
I just want to express my gratitude and appreciation for the working relationship we have created with the Realtors Association over the last few years to address really serious issues like housing affordability and the appropriate use of REIT funds. And especially want to thank the Realtors for stepping up financially and helping members of my caucus. That is much appreciated. It certainly has not gone unnoticed by our leadership. So again, thanks very much to the Realtors and look forward to continuing this relationship through the years. Thanks again.
Well, hey, Washington State Realtors. State Representative Andrew Barkas, represent the beautiful 2nd Legislative District here in Thurston and Pierce County. And coming to you from my corporate office here in Olympia, getting ready to start the 2021 legislative session. Hey, I just want to take a quick second and thank you all for your continued advocacy. This last election cycle was so important, advocating for so many candidates and representatives and senators throughout the state of Washington. It made a huge difference in so many races. We got a lot of work ahead of us though, and that continued involvement is going to be very important moving into the 2021 session. Although it's different, it's going to be virtual, you'll still have an opportunity to participate in committees and hearings and on bills that are going to be very important not only to the housing industry but the whole housing crisis as a whole. I am planning on running a couple more bills, working with the Realtors on several issues to introduce some policy that we've been working on for the last couple of years to get at this housing issue that we have here in the state of Washington. But anyway, I just want to say thank you again for your support. Thank you for your continued advocacy and involvement in the profession as we all work together to make Washington State a better state and to get at this housing crisis that we've had for several years.
Great video. We're happy to work with great legislators on both sides of the aisle. This is the point of the show when we would normally do an upbeat, maybe even aggressive pitch for our PAC. In fact, we even filmed a video before the new year with a couple of great volunteers, Margot Wheeler-Willis, and Catherine Carey. Since that time, events have happened that have made the leadership team at WR think about what we can do to discourage violent political rhetoric and actions and encourage and foster civil debate. It has been a challenging year in the political arena, and we need to get back into a place where those that disagree with us are not our enemies and that to defeat by any means necessary, including violence. We believe that an organization that has even a little bit of political power and influence should stand up right now for honest and civil debate against violence. So here's what we are doing. We typically send money to the National Association of Realtors, but for the time being, we're pushing the pause button on that. We are urging them at the federal level to think about this. We're also putting together a group at Washington Realtors to examine how we give and what impact we have on bringing a more reasonable discourse back to politics. We know this is a tricky subject, and whatever we do, some are going to say we should have gone further, and others are going to say we went way too far. But myself and the leadership team thinks that this is a worthy debate and a worthy subject to talk about and struggle with. We will keep you updated as we go through this process. And with that said, we are still fundraising, and we still want to raise some money today. And as you have seen today, we use it very effectively. So we have a link to the RPAC at the end of the presentation and would encourage you to go there and give. We know that we take this seriously, and when we let elected officials use our name and our money, we are always trying to strive to do it better. This brings us to the end of our formal program. And for those of you that were here for the first time, thank you. For those of you that are here for the second, third, fourth, or like myself, 20th time, thank you. Every member means so much to us. You are what make us strong, and our differences make us stronger. We thank you for those who are seasoned vets. Thank you for being here again. And like I've asked many times, for those of you that are first timers, please come back next year when we are live and at Olympia so that you can see the interchange between us and our political leaders. Some of you now will go to your local caucuses and get ready for virtual meetings with legislators. Some of you will go about your day. I hope that you enjoyed today, and I'll ask that you'll consider coming in person again next year in 2022. Have a great Thursday, everyone, and this program is now officially concluded. Thank you.